Morning everybody, it's Tuesday the 22nd of October 2024. It's just after 6 o'clock in the morning on a very foggy Goulburn morning, and I'm just starting my morning run. I'm going to talk today about the Chicago Marathon and make a few comments about that. I should clarify a few things. First of all, number one, I've never run a marathon, and so some people might reasonably say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't a discussion about running the marathon as much as a response to a particular result. I'll come to that in a moment. Secondly, I don't know the person that I'm going to talk about. I've never met her. I've never even heard of her until she won the event. And I only decided to find out more about her as a result of all the discussion that's going on. And the third point to make is I don't own and I've never worn any magic shoes. Alright, and all of that said, let's get to the substance of it all. So, the Chicago Marathon was run recently, about a week ago, I think, and a Kenyan woman named Ruth Chepngetich, I hope that's the proper way to say her name, I apologise if I've mangled it. She was the first female across the line. She crossed the line in 2 hours, 9 minutes and 57 seconds, which was an achievement for a couple of reasons. Number one, she was the first woman to run a marathon in under 2 hours and 10 minutes. And that's a time that many in the running world had said would never be broken. But remember, I also said that once about the 4-minute mile. That's kind of the point of records, isn't it? Somebody sets one, and then people say they think they can do better, and they'd like to break it. Now the other significant thing about her time was that it put her at number 9, I think, in the top 10 marathon runners in the world. The other 8, of course, all being men. Now, when the time was recorded and accepted as provisionally a new record, most of the response was positive. People were happy that she'd done it. People were congratulating her on her achievement. And acknowledging it for what it was. And then came the doubters. And the doubters were suggesting 3 things that might indicate that everything wasn't right with her run. I'll come to those in a second, but once those doubts were raised and began to be being voiced, and I think the first of them was at the press conference after the event, there were those who said anyone who doubts their performance is either a racist, sexist, or a misogynist. And I'm not going to get into any name calling, and I'm not here to defend her or criticise her. She will stand or fall on her own merits. I'm just here in this video to present an alternative view of what we know at the moment. Now, those who started raising red flags about her performance said there were 3 things that seemed to indicate maybe the result wasn't on the up and up. The first was to just say, well, nobody's ever run that fast. No woman's ever run that fast. She couldn't possibly have done it without some chemical enhancement. The second point they made was to say she had male pacers who ran all the way with her, and that gave her an unfair advantage. And the third thing they said was she wore magic shoes, and that also gave her an unfair advantage. let's turn to the doping allegation first of all. They say, those who doubted her performance, that she must have taken something because you just couldn't run that fast otherwise. Now, they don't produce any evidence to support that claim. There are no documents, there are no lab analyses, there are no statements from anyone to say they've tested her and she has returned positive samples. The fact that her time is still considered a provisional new world record is because the results of the drug testing have not yet been released, and so until they are, we have no evidence to suggest she did or she didn't take something she should not have that's a banned substance. The second point they make is to say, well, based on that, is to say, well, she's a Kenyan, and that's true, and the Kenyan Anti-Doping Authority has a very poor rating when it comes to its integrity. It's very low down on the list of world anti-doping authority bodies in terms of its integrity and record keeping, and that is certainly true. It is said that lots of Kenyan runners have been banned for doping, and in fact one guy was banned, has been banned for 10 years because not only did he return positive results, there was some dodgy thing going on with his medical records, which the Kenyan Anti-Doping Authority were involved in. That seems to me to be a case of guilt by association. Yes, she's a Kenyan. That doesn't mean every Kenyan is necessarily involved in doping or involved in the cover-ups or whatever else that may be happening with the Kenyan anti-doping body. They say that this woman, Ruth, has been tested many times and always returned clean samples, but still they say she couldn't possibly have run this time if she hadn't taken something. And those who are critical of her performance say that she's taking whatever she takes in such small doses as for it to be undetectable, but that it gives her the edge that she needs over time rather than just a short sugar hit type thing. Now, don't know anything about doping or illegal substances like that, so I don't know if that claim is true or not. That brings us to considering the integrity of this particular event. Now, the Chicago Marathon, as I understand it, is one of the premier marathons on the calendar every year. It's run by this Abbott group that run all the major marathons around the world, including the Sydney one. Its standing is such that it allows runners to accumulate points for rankings. Times are accepted for World Championships and Olympic qualifiers and so on. So you would think that the people who organise this event would want to do everything they could to maintain the integrity and prestige of their event. You would assume they have their own post-race doping procedures and tests procedures. You would assume that those are mandatory for those who obtain a podium finish, as they say. And you would assume that they use an independent, reputable lab that is certified by the appropriate international authorities to conduct that sort of testing. And that they in fact would have probably two separate labs, one for the A sample and one for the B sample. As yet, no information has been released by the organisers to suggest that there is anything shown up in her samples that have raised a red flag or caused people to say, well, you better open the B sample as well. And that may be because the testing is still in progress. A week and a half later seems to be a long time for that to happen. But as I say, at this point, no evidence has been produced to suggest that this run was anything other than what it appeared to be somebody running a good time on that day. There were no documents, there were no lab reports, there were no analysis of her urine or blood samples or any other samples that might suggest that anything untoward has happened. And the second reason that the naysayers say the result is at best questionable is because she had paces. Now, I don't know anything about the rules of these events, but I would assume you don't just turn up to the start line and say, get your name crossed off, Chepngetich here. Oh, and by the way, I brought a couple of mates who are going to run with me. I assume that the use of paces is approved by the organisers of that particular event, sanctioned by any international authority that needs to sanction them to say, well, we still consider this to be a fair event and the result to be fair. and that there are rules that govern what the pacers can do and whether they can run with you until the finish line, or the rule is where you've got to drop off, 1k before or something or other. It is said by those who are criticising her use of pacers that she was able to tuck in behind them and they were able to break up the wind and give her an easier run. And as I said, I've never run a marathon, and I've never run close enough behind a pacer to know if that works or not. But as I said, I would assume that whatever she did there was considered to be legal. Running a marathon, I imagine, is a pretty difficult task. You train for an awful long time. Morning, you take proper care with your training program, you eat properly, you hydrate properly, you do everything you're supposed to do properly for a very long time. You get to the starting line and you set off. And as we saw in the Paris Olympics, one of the 3 women that ran for Australia, who no doubt done all of those things, she got a cramp within the first kilometre or so and had to step off the course. So you can do everything right and something just goes wrong on the day. You do everything right and you're running and everything feels good, and somewhere you hit the wall apparently 30 kilometres out or something like that, and all the physical preparation, all the training, all the kilometres you put in your legs, it helps. And what helps when you hit the wall, I reckon, is probably the mental game. The game that, the part of you that you dig deeper and you find something extra and you just keep running and you make yourself keep going because that's what you do. And whilst having the paces there gives you a tempo and a rhythm and everything, you're still the person who's got to put one leg in front of the other and just keep going. And when your body's crying out for you to stop and for you to give up, you keep going because you have that mental toughness or whatever it is that keeps you going. And I'm not sure that the pacers who are just there running in front of you and trying to help you stay on pace, I'm not sure how much impact they have on the mental battle you're fighting between, do I keep going or do I just give up? Now the third point that's put forward by the doubters of her performance is that she wore magic shoes and that gave her an unfair advantage. The first point to note is So did lots of other runners. Magic shoes. Magic shoes I refer to as these new high-tech shoes that look like those chunky cork shoes that women used to wear in the 80s or 90s, whoever it was, that all the shoe companies have now, and all the elite runners and those who are good enough to get a sponsorship for their equipment, they wear their company's version of the magic shoe. There is some analysis to show that the times of both men and women have been coming down since the advent of the magic shoe, and so it must be making some impact. My question is, how much of that impact is actual and how much is placebo effect? By that I mean the shoe designers tell you this new shoe will do whatever they say it'll do, and you wear it and you think it will, so perhaps it does. Now that might be drawing a long bow, but I recall when I read that book called Born to Run, reading in that book about some researchers who were interested in the impact of expensive and cheap running shoes. So they got two groups of runners who were as alike as possible in every respect, same age, same running history, same running times, so forth. They gave each runner a pair of shoes. They told some runners the shoes were expensive ones. They told the others these were cheap. They sent them off to run, and they found that the shoes that they wore had next to no impact on their performance. And then the difference between an expensive shoe performance and a cheap shoe performance, in their tests at least, could be explained by any other number of variables, including just how the runner performed on the day. And that's not to say that the magic shoes don't have any impact, because the falling times in both men's and women's events suggest that they do. But returning to my earlier point about the mental side of running, I'm not sure that the magic shoe is going to have much impact there. The runner still has to have the mental strength, the resilience, whatever word it is you want to use, to get to the end of the line or get to the finish line, overcome the physical pain, and win the mental battle. I'm trying to find out more about this lady's performance. I watched a video on YouTube, yes, from a woman who is a biomechanic, I think that's probably the right word, who analysed Ruth's running style. She compared it with the way she was running in London earlier this year, and with the way she ran Chicago last year. And she made a number of observations, most of which didn't mean a lot to me, but I'm sure they would mean things to running coaches and athletes of that calibre, that indicated things to do with the placement of her head during each stride, the alignment between her thigh and her femur or lower leg, calf, and the position of her foot relative to the rest of her body, under her body and head of her body and so on, that all indicate